Hello, my name is Robert Shaw, and I chose Hugo Wolf's Elfenlied, part of the America Leader, for my capstone. Hugo Wolf was born in Austria in 1860 and was a composer in the late Romantic era. One of his biggest inspirations was Richard Wagner, and he also shared many commonalities with the French composer Claude Debussy. How they differed, however, is in Wolf's usage of chromaticism as well as non-functional harmonic progressions, as compared to Debussy's use of scales such as pentatonic, whole tone, and mode. Wolf began working on the America Leader in 1888, and it would contain some of his most popular and well-known songs. It highlighted Wolf's ability to retain text purity and allowed text to lead the composition process. Wolf's ability to write contrasting material based on the poet or poem is what makes his music so unique. Wolf's compositions were often a reflection of Romantic era practices, as well as a glimpse of what 20th century music would be. Edward Mürker was a German-born poet born in 1804. He was a Romantic era poet. He was a Lutheran pastor, which was much of his big inspiration for his poems. But he also wrote secular works which often were humorous and lyrical and could contain non-human or fairy tale creatures as well. Elfenlied, a German poem by Mürker, tells of an elf that mistakes a watchman's call for 11 o'clock, which happens to be the same word for elf in German, Elfa. The song is reflective of the elf's movements and emotions in the poem and adds to the whimsical nature. This piece, like many others of Wolf's compositions, is through composed and driven by the text. The overall form of Elfenlied is a progressive ABCD form. This is because it is through composed. A is at the antithesis of measure 1 and is in the key of F with repeated modulations. B starts at measure 22, and this is because of a major change in the accompaniment from a quarter note to a 16th note pattern. C is at measure 42 when it changes to the key of G major, and D at measure 53 in the key of F with repeated modulations again. Important themes of Elfenlied is in both measures 1 through 4 and 4 and 9 go up in a diatonic scale that ends with an octave leap down. This octave leap then carries over into the accompaniment and repeats this octave leap motif until measure 29. It is brought back into the melody again into measure 54. The repeated theme of 3 consecutive eighth notes of the same pitch, followed by either an ascending or descending line, is also found in section A, but most prominently in section B. There are two measure phrases, and usually we're 2 repeating patterns ascending and 2 repeating patterns descending. In section C, a repeated phrase of an arpeggiated G major chord is found, followed by a repeating phrase of a G major scale from Do to Fall. Abrasive accompaniment pattern is found in measure 54. This is text painting of the disorientation that the elf feels after hitting his head. Some important key centers in this piece is measure 42, in which the piece is the most into the key center in the key of G major. This is likely due to the themes of disorientation and awakening from slumber earlier in the piece, which causes this modulation. And then in measure 42, meeting that point of resolution with the key center with the melodic line. The repeated G major chord highlights the text in which the elf thinks he sees a wedding celebration and rushes forward with excitement. Some of the techniques used in this piece is some contrasting dynamics, such as pianissimo and forte. Pianissimo is the majority of this piece, with the accompaniment at one point being pianissimo. This is to highlight the storytelling aspect of the text and talking about it during the nighttime with the hushed tone. Wolf's accompaniment is a character of its own, and Wolf tended to make Mürker's poetry about fairy tale creatures have a whimsical nature into the music, and often sounded like movements of those creatures, such as during the piece, tip-a-tap sounds like a person tip-tapping around. And when the elf rushes towards the wall and hits his head, there is this build-up of a
elf almost getting ready to run towards the wall, and then finally a crunch chord of the elf hitting his head. And this, with many other things in Wolf's pieces, is what makes his pieces so unique. Thank you.